Hi, we're here today with Trudell Green. She works at a technical services and reference lab at the nonprofit blood supplier Vitalent. Thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your experiences in the field and hopefully raising some awareness about the process of blood donation. Um,
Thank you for inviting.
yeah, of course. So the first question we have for you is, can you explain to us a little bit about your job and how you became interested in this field in the first place?
Well, my job right now is I'm essentially the technical director of the laboratory at Vitalent in Montville, New Jersey. And my major responsibilities are over the laboratory, our reference lab and our technical services lab, where we provide blood and we do special workups for patients who have difficult cross matches. And so that's basically what I do is I run that lab right now. And
So,
did you say, how did I get interested in it?
yes, yeah.
Oh, okay. So I'm one of those weird birds that actually, when I was a junior in high school, kind of like the age you guys are,
Sure.
they had this fair, like a job fair, and it was like pre-college. Where do you think you might end up?
Mhm.
And at that fair, I learned about medical technology, and I went, oh, that's pretty cool. I like science. I want to help people. I think I'd like working in a lab. And so I decided when I was a junior in high school, I was going to be a med tech,
Wow.
and went to college, got my medical technology degree, got a degree in microbiology. And while I was getting my med tech degree, when you're a general laboratorian, you're taught chemistry and you're taught all the different things, all the hematology, bacteriology, and blood banking. They're all the different disciplines that you learn while you're in school. And I took a real interest in blood banking because it was like a puzzle. And it seemed like it was a really important part of laboratories because all the other tests, if the doctor looks at a test result and kind of questions it, he'll just have it repeated. He or she will have it repeated. With blood banking, you're kind of the last say. There's nothing they can check. So you have to be very precise. You have to really understand what you're doing. You can't make mistakes because the end result could be that someone could die. So that was really interesting to me. And so I went to blood bank school, and I've actually made an entire career in different ways in blood banking.
Wow, and you knew from junior year. That's crazy.
I knew from my junior year in high school.
Impressive.
Yeah,
It's
very.
crazy.
So you touched on it briefly about like how it's what you work in the lab after the blood is taken from blood donations. Can you just tell us more about that process that happens before, like after the blood has been donated and before it gets to the patient?
Right.
Especially because I feel like a lot of people don't know, and like you said, it's really the difference between like making sure someone gets what they need in the time that they need it.
Right. I, I mean, first and foremost, just the blood donation process itself. And I know you've talked to other people about this, but it's safe. It's totally safe. You can't get anything from donating blood. And blood supply itself is very, very safe. Um, we do all kinds of tests. Once we get the unit of blood goes to the manufacturing area where they make it into platelets or they make it into fresh frozen plasma, cryoprecipitate, or red blood cells. But while that's happening, we take the blood samples that come from that unit of blood and we send them to a laboratory who does 11 infectious disease tests. So any bloodborne pathogen that has been discovered to be able to be transmitted in blood and we can test for it, we do. So that means HIV, hepatitis, um, Zika, West Nile, all of the diseases that people are afraid that they might get by getting a transfusion. So if I were getting a transfusion today, I would feel safer than ever because of all the different tests that we do. In New Jersey and New York, we also test for babesiosis because in this area, babesiosis is something that can be transmitted in the blood. So it's very, very safe, and we do that process in order to protect the blood supply.
So like what specifically are you doing on like the day-to-day basis to make sure all of these things are tested for?
Well, the flow in the laboratory is we make sure that there's all these checks and balances. So we send the samples to be tested, but when the results come back, we have to make sure that they're uploaded properly and that all of the results, infectious disease testing, the blood type, any of the testing that we do gets properly transferred to that donor's record. And by that transfer, the blood then gets labeled. So it gets the blood type on it. It gets the labeling that says that it doesn't have any infectious diseases. If it's been tested for sickle cell, that information is put on it. If it's CMV negative, that information is put on it. So that's what's happening on that part of the blood. The part that my lab does is when the patients come in, some patients, especially the multiply transfused patients, they sometimes get antibodies. When, in a very simple way of saying it, when they get blood, that blood is not just like theirs. It's different than theirs. So things like, and they're called antigens, if there's something that your body doesn't recognize as being yourself, then it can form an antibody to that. And that happens in many patients, especially the ones that get a lot of transfusions, the cancer patients, sickle cell patients, any of the patients that are going to be transfused over a period of time, they have that risk of getting those antibodies. Once they do get them, we help identify them and we help find the blood that is compatible with them. So if someone has, say, 5 different antibodies, then we know what those 5 antibodies are, and we have tested the blood, and we give that patient that doesn't have the antigens in those units of blood, so that when they get transfused, they don't harm the patient. And sometimes it gets really tricky because we'll get orders for like 10 units of blood that have 6 or 7 different antibodies for a sickle cell transfusion. So we're pulling our blood, we've already tested it, we're trying to make sure we've got all of the units they need. They do double checks, and then it gets taken to the hospitals, and that's where the blood's actually transfused. We just get it ready and make sure it's safe before it leaves our site.
And that's definitely really, really important. So with all the experience that you've had in your field, can you tell us why you think it's important for us to have a diverse and constant supply of blood at all times?
Well, genetics plays a big part in that because every ethnicity has a different makeup. So like some ethnicities will be more type O blood, some will be more type A blood, but there's also 356 other antigens that are on your red blood cells. So if you end up getting an antibody to one of those antigens that your red blood cells don't have, and 98% of the people who have donated have that antigen, then you've only got a 2% chance that you're going to get blood that's compatible for you. If people of your same ethnicity, if Hispanics and Black and Asian, if they all donate, then the people of those same ethnicities, if they've got these special blood needs, we will have blood on our shelves that will match for them, where 98% of the rest of it won't. So that's the really, really important part of having a diverse group of donors, is so that the blood's really on the shelf when their ethnic group needs it. So it's some of it will go for anybody and it's fine, but there are the rare kinds that just everybody doesn't have.
Yeah, thank you for putting that like so well explained, because that's something that Shivani and I have only really learned about recently, and it's something that can be really hard to explain and understand sometimes. And I feel like it's one of the very like lesser known things about the blood donation process. I know it's pretty well known that blood gets tested for HIV and Zika virus, but the fact that we need a large amount of like every different type of ethnicity to donate is something that I feel like a lot of people really don't know right now.
I think the whole concept of like more than just ABO plus minus is surprising to most people, that like, hey, there's more things that are being checked and need to be checked.
Yeah. And I think that's also the important, if you've got a family member, whenever we have someone that has a rare blood type and they've got an antibody, the first thing we do, if it's one of those extremely rare that's like 0.1% chance of us finding a unit of blood on a shelf for them. What we'll do is we'll test their families, because within their own families, their own siblings, they're likely to have a match. Just like when they're doing bone marrow matches, or they're trying to find someone that can donate stem cells for someone. It's just, you first check that group of people, then your family, and then your ethnicity in those particular kinds of antigens run within the genetic base of those different ethnicities.
So yeah, we're definitely living in like an unprecedented time right now with the pandemic and everything. And so
Sure.
I think you have a really unique perspective on all of this. So how have you seen like blood income change, and or like blood demand even from hospitals on the other side change with the pandemic?
Well, it was very interesting because when the pandemic first started and people started becoming aware of it, everybody wanted to donate blood. So we had a lot of blood because it was just, becoming aware of it. Everybody thinks, well, if there's a sickness, then somebody's going to need blood. The fact was that a COVID patient doesn't use blood. So we had more blood than we needed. And then as the COVID grew, as there were more and more patients, and it started climbing, and they stopped doing elective surgeries. They were totally overwhelmed with COVID patients. So the only people that needed blood, I mean, even the people that routinely got blood, like the sickle cell patients, they were put off. They were considered elective unless their hematocrit got really, really low. So what happened was we had more blood than we needed. And so that lasted a while. We got it down. The other thing that happened at exactly the same time is when we went into the shutdown, all the places that we normally draw blood shut down. We go to schools, all the schools shut down. We go to colleges, all the colleges shut down. We go to businesses, all the businesses shut down. So what we really had was just our couple little donor rooms where people could come in, and people were afraid because they're supposed to be social distanced. And so we had to figure all of that out, how we could social distance and protect our staff and protect the donors and make sure that social distancing took place. So that was happening. So our blood supply, we didn't have a big need. We didn't have very many donors. So it was kind of balancing out. But then when more of the COVID patients started going home, we got a phone call from our hospitals, like on a Friday, that they were going to start doing elective surgeries on Monday. And we're going, okay, good, they'll use some of our blood. They started doing elective surgeries on Monday, 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week. And they wanted blood for all of those. So then our little bitty blood supply was like, bam, we were hit. And it happened nationwide. And so we were in absolutely the worst blood shortage I've seen in my 40-year career. We did not have the blood to put in the hospitals. We were having to beg from each other. We had the hospitals at the lowest limit they could possibly be. And it's taken us a while to start like getting the blood built back up. And we're in Vitalent, which is a nationwide organization. And so we always ship to help each other. Nobody had any blood. So it was very, very difficult times in that respect.
Thank you for sharing that. That's crazy. I really hope that as time goes on, we get back into our normal lives, and hopefully blood drives start happening again, like you said, at schools and businesses, and hopefully we can get blood to hospitals again. But
yeah, they started picking up, our donations have started picking up. A few businesses, we may have 3 or 4 blood drives a week when we used to have 15 or 20 a week. So, but it's starting to pick up, and it's kind of leveled out right now. We're still shaky, but no one should be afraid because they're going to get their blood. But if we have a second wave and they have to shut things down again, then I think the lessons we've learned are that we work with our hospitals and say, could you give us like a week's notice or so before you start doing elective surgeries again so we can get the supply back up? There have been a lot of lessons learned.
Yeah, I think it's really inspiring to see how much you guys have adjusted to this entire pandemic and how it's affected all of the hospitals. I know you mentioned that you had to figure out how people could donate blood with it still being safe and with people still being social distanced. So how have regulations in your lab also changed to kind of help keep all of you guys safe and possibly the blood safe, if anything?
Yeah, well, the blood is always going to be safe because it's going to be tested properly. I know in the blood drives where they're collecting donors, they have the beds spread apart. They take people's temperatures before they even let them come in. They're doing things to protect not only the staff, but make sure that the donors don't come in when they're just getting the virus. So those things have changed. So, those kinds of regulations on the donation side. What has happened, the day-to-day regulations for the laboratory haven't changed except for one aspect. We were one of the first blood centers. The Vitalant in Montvale was one of the first blood centers in all of Vitalant across the nation to start producing convalescent plasma. And what convalescent plasma is people who have had the COVID virus, they have recovered. They have the antibodies now because they've had the antigen, just like the blood I was telling you. So the virus is the antigen. Their body's never seen it before. So it builds up antibodies to that virus, and they get well. Well, this is not a blood-borne disease, so it can't be transmitted in blood. It can only be transmitted through saliva, through sneezing and coughing and stuff like that. So what they found is we worked with the FDA, and there was this whole protocol in place for the whole nation, working with hospitals and the blood centers, where once a patient had been known to have coronavirus, they had gotten over it, they were no longer positive for the pharyngeal swabs, then they were allowed to come and donate plasma. And what the plasma does, because it's where the antibodies are, we could take one donor's plasma and break it into 4 products, and we could treat 4 coronavirus affected patients. And so that plasma would go to the sickest of the sick when we were first doing it. If we only had 50, if there were people that were getting ready to die, they would give those patients the convalescent plasma. And as we've gone on, and it's worked so well, we've built up an inventory. We were able to help the patients, since there's no treatment right now and there's no vaccine, we were able to help the patients in New York and New Jersey immensely. And so now that it's gone down and it's shifted to Texas and Arizona, guess what? We're shipping our convalescent plasma to Texas and Arizona and the military. So there were lots of new regulations with that. So we had different ways we had to test it, we had to handle it, the donors had to be treated differently, it had to be marked differently, it was tagged, and it was shipped to hospitals where they had recruited the donors for us. And that has changed like weekly, even until last week. So we've now finally got a process that said the rules aren't changing every week, and we've got a nice inventory, and that's really one of the contributions that our center's been able to make to the convalescent patients.
It's really incredible how much you guys can use what other people have recovered from to help even more people. And like Gori mentioned before, it's amazing how you guys have adapted so well. And you were talking about how you wanted to how, from what we've learned, how to react better in case of a second wave. Do you have any advice for the general public on how they should react if this happens again, when they should donate blood or how they should expect to conduct themselves?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to leave the advice to the scientists, to the CDC. My best advice to everybody is follow the science. I'm a scientist. Don't follow the politics or your best friends. Follow the science. Right. Protect yourself and protect other people. That's on that side of it. The other side of it is that I want people to understand there's no substitute for blood. If they stop donating and we have no blood, people are going to die. And blood has a shelf life. Platelets have a shelf life. Blood's good for 35 to 42 days, and then we have to throw it away if it's not used. Platelets are 5 days, and 2 of those 5 days are taken up with testing. So when the blood center calls you, please come. I mean, they don't call you when they don't need blood. They only call you when they do. And the one thing that I have seen that I really love about all of this is people like you girls. you have gotten an interest. I'm so proud of the interest and how you've pursued learning this and teaching others about it. And a lot of the youth and the millennials that nobody think does anything, they've stepped forward. They're paying attention. So if we can get that energy to continue, if the youth would set a practice as donating blood or platelets or plasma is part of their social responsibility, and it's part of the way that they give back to their communities, and not are waiting to get a certificate or a Target card or something like that, that they really it becomes altruistic again, like it was when my generation was growing up. The baby boomers are getting old. We've been the ones that have been providing the blood supply for all these many years. And as we're aging, we need the group behind us to pick up the baton and to start donating on a regular basis as part of their normal life. And I would love to see that happen as part of this horrible, terrible time we're having right now. I notice people being nicer. I hope they pick up the fact that they can give back in so many ways that are meaningful. So.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we hope that we can be a part of causing that movement or that education within people. But thank you so much for your time. I don't think we have anything else to ask, right, Gory? Good?
Yeah, thank you so much for all the work that you're doing during this time. We really appreciate everything you're doing and for talking to us and taking the time out of your day. So thank you.
You're welcome. I appreciate you asking me to do it, and just hope it goes well and people listen. It'd be great.
We hope you and your family stay safe.
You too. You guys be safe and practice healthy practices.
Yes, you too.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.